We can set this up for you in the corner.
I said Carolina color, thank you. Take the state class is starting.
He's bossing me.
You're not the boss of me.
I am.
That's right. We got a slim crowd today. Everybody must be home cooking.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
You're good.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sorry.
All the ones that misbehave are not here, so I guess that means. Okay.
Was it the other way around?
Maybe so. So, we skipped a week. Do y'all remember 2 weeks ago?
Now you're pushing it.
I do.
What do you remember?
I remember that we need to think about how people's upbringing impacts the way they are in adulthood.
Mm-hmm. So Marley's ghost came to visit Scrooge to warn him that, hey, you know, if you don't change your ways, you're going to end up like me, dragging chains around for the rest of eternity.
Their eternal consequence.
Yes. So he told Scrooge that he would be visited by 3 spirits, or ghosts, whichever term you wish to use. So Scrooge goes to sleep and wakes up worrying about all that. And the first spirit appears to him. And Dickens describes this first spirit. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet no so like a child as like an old man, viewed through some supernatural medium, which gave him the appearance of having receded from the view and being diminished to a child's proportions. Its hair, which hung about its neck and down its back, was white, as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it, and the tenderest bloom was on its skin. The arms were very long and muscular, the hands the same, as if its hold were of uncommon strength. Its legs and feet, most delicately formed, were, like those upper members, bare. It wore a tunic of the purest white, and round its waist was bound a lustrous belt, the sheen of which was beautiful. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand, and in singular contradiction of that wintry emblem, had its dress trimmed with summer flowers. But the strangest thing about it was that from the crown of its head there sprung a bright, clear jet of light, by which all this was visible, and which was doubtless the occasion of its using in its duller moments a great extinguisher for a cap which it now held under its arm. So it's kind of a older person, yet a younger person, a child that's combined as to an adult. You know, when we think of our past, sometimes we don't all remember all of the details. For instance, the Christmas story in the Bible. Now, we all have manger scenes, I assume, and we all have our little main characters, Mary, Joseph, and the baby. We have the sheep, we have a donkey, we have cows, we have, in fact, I saw one in the store recently had a little chicken coop. You know, we have this whole thing. There you go. And of course, we always have the little wise men there. You know, mine are facing east. But nowhere in the Bible does it say that the wise men were there at the birth. Nowhere does it say there were 3. But we in our little minds want this perfect little package that we can put together. Everything's all perfect and everything, you know. And over the years, I guess the reason we thought there were 3 was because there were 3 gifts. We've even given them names, you know, over the years. Nowhere in the Bible are the names mentioned. It's Casper, somebody.
Balthazar,
Melchior. But nowhere in the Bible does it say that there were 3, that they were. It took them 2 years to get there. And see, in our minds, we want everything to be perfect. So when we look back into our past, we want that to be perfect too. So we don't want to think about the bad things, because that's, you know, that's scary. And we can't relive our past, but we can learn from our past. So this little spirit, ghost, critter, came to take Scrooge back to show him what happened in his past. Now his first visit shows Scrooge as a little boy, probably 10, 12 years old, all by himself, lonely. He was apparently at a boarding school or something, because everybody else had gone home for Christmas and he was there all by himself, just poor little thing, you know. And there was probably there had to be a teacher or a caretaker or somebody that stayed behind, and this person was probably grumpy because they had to stay behind because this one little kid that wouldn't go home. So, you know, the whole thing was just a sad situation.
Well, his dad wouldn't let him come home.
That's right. We find that out in the next. Yeah. But he read books. He read books, and the characters in the books were his friends. Ali Baba, Robinson Crusoe, all the classics of the time. So Scrooge is taken back to see that. And first he's happy. He sees all the kids that he knew that they were probably friends, but not friendly enough to take him home with them, you know. And he looks at this lonely little child, himself as a lonely little child. And the little veneer he has around himself begins to crack. Because he looks at this lonely little child and says, "Poor boy," and he cries. "I wish," Scrooge muttered, putting his hand in his pocket and looking about him after drying his eyes with his cuff. "But it's too late now." "What's the matter?" asked the spirit. "Nothing," said Scrooge, "nothing. There was a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night. I should like to have given him something. That's all." So he has a little bit of compassion because he remembers in his past how lonely he was and how sad he was. And he remembers the little boy that was singing a Christmas carol. So he can relate to him. So his gruffy little veneer is beginning to crack. So the ghost smiles like, "Aha, this is working." So he says, "Okay, let's sing another Christmas." So he shows him a few years later when he's probably a teenager, would you say, maybe? And he's sitting there by himself again. Everybody else is gone, but he's not sitting there reading books this time. He's pacing back and forth. And all of a sudden the door opens and a little girl comes in. His sister, his younger sister, Fan. I always want to call her Nan. And so he's all excited. That's his beloved sister. And she says, "I have come to bring you home, dear brother. To bring you home, home, home." "Home?" he says. "Yes, home for good and all. Home for ever and ever. Father is so much kinder than he used to be that home's like heaven. He spoke so gently to me one dear night when I was going to bed that I was not afraid to ask him once more if you might come home. And he said, yes, you should, and sent me in a coach to bring you. And you're never to come back here. But first we're to be together all the Christmas long and have the merriest time in all the world." Now, there's never any mention of Scrooge's mother, although in the movie version there is that she died while giving birth to him. But the book says nothing like that. In fact, his sister's younger than him, so obviously that didn't happen. There's never a mention of his mother. We don't know why his father sent him away, whether he had done something that he was mad at him for, but there was a relationship issue there, apparently. So he finally, and we don't know why he finally gave in to bring him back. Maybe he had a new wife or something, I don't know. But his so-called, I guess, punishment had ended, so he gets to come home. Well, the ghost mentions his sister, what a wonderful child she was. She grew up to be a wonderful woman. And he said, I believe she had children. And Scrooge said, one child. True, the ghost said, your nephew. Now this was the nephew Fred that tried so hard. Every Christmas he would invite Scrooge to come to dinner. And remember last week we talked about him coming in and Scrooge made fun of him. Why'd you have to go and get married? He said, because I fell in love. And he said, like, love, you know, like Lord. So this is another little crack in his veneer. His beloved sister, his only relative that was really nice to him, had a child who was the only survivor of his entire family besides him. And he'd been rebuffing his nephew, making fun of his nephew for wanting to celebrate Christmas, for wanting to be a part of his life. So he kind of looks back and, you know, maybe I do need to change. Maybe I should accept him. So the ghost isn't finished yet. He takes him to a third visit of his past. He's a little older now. He's through school. He's an apprentice at Fezziwig's place. He and another guy are an apprentice. And so Scrooge is watching he and this other apprentice, and he says, Dick Wilkins. Yeah, there he is. He was very much attached to me, was Dick. Poor Dick, dear, dear. So you get the impression that maybe the friend, the other apprentice wanted to be a friend, but he, you know, no, I can't get involved with anybody. You know, I'm busy. I got to get started on my career and everything. But it's Christmas Eve at Fezziwig's. I don't know where that name came from. And Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig are having this ginormous party where they invite all their friends, and of course since they own the place, they're probably up there, you know, and everybody else is down there except their friends. So they're throwing this ball, this huge party with all this drink and food and dancing and music and singing. And they invite their two employees to stay. They're showing hospitality to their you know, people that are below them. Well, he just has the best time, and he's just laughing and singing. He said, that was just such a wonderful, wonderful time. So the ghost says, you know, that must have cost him a lot of money to put that on. And Scrooge says, no, he didn't spend that much. He said, the spirit says, he has spent but a few pounds of your mortal money, 3 or 4 perhaps. Is that so much that he deserves this praise? Because Scrooge was saying that was really great. It isn't that, said Scrooge, heated by the remark, and speaking unconsciously like his former, not his latter self. It isn't that, spirit. He has the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or a toil. Say that his power lies in words and looks and things so slight and insignificant that it's impossible to add up and count them. What then? The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it had cost a fortune. Now this is Scrooge saying this. So then he stops. And the ghost said, what's the matter? Nothing, nothing. And the ghost keeps pressing. Oh, what? Yeah, something's wrong. No. I'd just like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk just now. That's all. So he puts himself in his clerk's shoes. And he remembers how the Fezziwigs were so kind to him as an employee and didn't spend a lot of money, just had a good time, invited them to be equals. And it didn't cost them anything to be nice. So he's feeling like, you know, poor old Bob Cratchit, I guess, you know, I'm not really nice to him. I make him freeze to death. I make him work.
At all.
Yeah. So he's beginning by looking at his past. He can relate in his past to how he grew up, how he started out working when he wasn't the boss, and he can relate to it, and how nice people were to him, and it points out dramatically how ornery he is to everybody else. So he's got one more visit. Apparently he got a lady friend along the way named Belle. And this is another Christmas of several years later. He's probably 20s, mid-20s, late 20s, older. And apparently she'd been waiting for him a long time. There's the implication that they were engaged for many years because he kept wanting to get enough money to support him. And he would just, you know, it's never enough. So she confronts him. She says that an idol has replaced her in his heart. And he's like, what kind of idol? What are you talking about? And she says, a golden one. And he said, there's nothing as hard as poverty, and there's nothing it professes to condemn with such severity as the pursuit of wealth. And she says, you fear the world too much. All your other hopes have merged into the hope of being beyond the chance of its sordid reproach. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until the master passion gain engrosses you. Have I not? And he said, well, you know, that doesn't have anything to do with us. And she says, well, you know, pretty much like, well, how long am I supposed to wait for you to be a millionaire before I could have a life, you know? So she says that she will release him from their contract, I guess their engagement or whatever, you know. And she says, you wouldn't give up anything for me, would you? And he started to deny it, but he couldn't. So she says, the memory of what is past half makes me hope you will have pain in this. A very, very brief time, and you will dismiss the recollection of it gladly as an unprofitable dream from which it happened well that you awoke. May you be happy in the life you have chosen. So she leaves him. So Scrooge turns to the spirit and says, quit torturing me. Let's stop this. I don't want to see anymore. But the ghost has figured out now, okay, he's cracking. There's one more I'm going to show him. So he shows him Belle, the fiancé's life now, or later. She's married somebody else. She's got a big family. She's happy as can be. So they look in on this scene of her and her kids and her husband met her. And his husband says, her husband, Belle, I saw an old friend of yours this afternoon. And she says, who was it? Guess. How can I? I don't know. But she was laughing. She said, Mr. Scrooge. And he said, Mr. Scrooge it was. I passed his office window, and as it was not shut up, he had a candle inside. I could scarcely help seeing him. His partner lies upon the point of death, I hear, and there he sat alone, quite alone in the world, I do believe. So he sees that his childhood started with him alone, And he had chances, he had opportunities to be with other people. His sister and her family, his friend at Fezziwigs, or wanted to be a friend, he's rebuffed all of them so that he can pursue his idol, the gold, the money, the millions. So he gives up everything because he thinks money will buy him happiness. But then he's forced to look, okay, you know, what have I got? I have tangible things, but I don't have love, I don't have friendship, I don't have family because I've turned them all away. So what do you think his main feeling from all these visions were? What main...
Should be regret.
Yeah, regret. Regret that he didn't make different choices. But that doesn't mean, I mean, we all have regrets in our lives. I'm sure we do. But that doesn't mean it's the end of the world.
It also doesn't mean that you do something about it.
Right, right. You can't change what you did, but you can become a better person because of what you did. God doesn't look at us for what we did in the past, or what we're going to do in the future, or what we're doing right. He sees us. Well, when Jesus called the fishermen, you know, he just went up and called Peter, Andrew, James, and John, and he was just walking along, saw them. And he said, drop your nets and follow me. So they did. They didn't question him. They didn't say, who is this cook? You know, where are we going? They just immediately followed him. So he obviously was really good at getting people to follow him. But maybe the miracle isn't what the disciples saw in Jesus that made them follow him. The miracle was what Jesus saw in them. So Jesus didn't see them for what they were, but he saw them for what they were to become. We would look at them and say, oh, a bunch of fishermen. But he saw inside them. He knew they had some kind of something in them that would make them fishers of men. So Christ doesn't call us to follow him because we're perfect, because the Lord knows we're not, but because through Christ we are perfected in love. And it doesn't mean that we're going to make perfect decisions, because we're never going to be. Scrooge is beginning to realize that the person he is doesn't look much like the person he once was. His bitterness consumed any love or joy that he once knew. In a way, he's walking down this path. He's not living the perfect plan for his life, but he's being given an opportunity to change his life. So another point this author makes out is how important Christmas is with music. And Fezziwigs, big old musical array, dancing and singing and all that stuff, was very important to Scrooge because he thought it was wonderful. Music has the power to create smiles or bring tears. You can calm a child with it. I know our first cat I picked up somewhere, and at a friend's house way over in Simpsonville, and she would all the way home and everything. So I put in a 8-track. I mean, not an 8-track, a cassette back then, and it was playing classical music. She's calm down. So, we should try that with Atticus, our child. But music has a calming effect, or a joyous effect, or, you know, if you think about it, okay, the angels sang and praised and announced Jesus' birth through music. God spoke into creation. He just spoke, you know, he says, let there be. Because music invites movement. So he said, God says, let there be, and light comes, and let there be, and the mountains are there. Music moves us emotionally. It moves our soul, mind, and body into communion with the God who spoke life into existence. So, by looking at his past, Scrooge figures out, well, you know, I'm really ashamed of the way I am. People were kind to me. So why am I not kind to others? It's a real awakening to him. The real Christmas miracle is not, well, it's the birth, but it's the fact that Jesus came, that God came to earth as a tiny little baby, and he had to go through all the growing up and everything that we have done. And this guy said, the fact that God allowed himself to be raised by a pair of human, fallible people is amazing. In other words, Christmas reveals that God trusted humanity more than humanity's ever trusted itself. Did you ever think about that? I mean, that was a big step for God to transform himself into a teeny weeny baby that was dependent on everything outside himself. But he went through the same growing up that we did, the same temptations that we did. So he knows what we're going through. He knows he knows why Scrooge is the way he is. Last week we lit the candle of peace, and we discovered that peace was sort of an absence of fear. Well, this week or last week we should have. We're up to the candle of hope, since we're a week behind because of the weather. By looking at Scrooge's past, he's given hope. And if we go back and look at our past and see the things that we've done wrong, the things that people we've injured, you know, through our actions, there's hope that we can go back and, in many cases, and fix what we've done. Sometimes there's not. That person may not be here anymore. But you can remember the hurt that you experience when you look at other people, and you can help them. That's the hope of Christmas, that nothing is ever so bad that the future won't be a little brighter if you sort of make the effort. I guess we're going to have to end early because the choir director's going to give us. Scrooge never regained Belle's love, but reliving the memory eventually moved him to compassion toward those who knew the pain of brokenness. So, we've all known heartache. We all have some painful memories. So how can God transform these memories and heartache into future blessings for you and others? Questions? Y'all are a quiet bunch this morning. Everybody's talking.
I am entranced by that description of the ghost of Christmas past. That's genius. This idea that it's distant, and so you can't see it quite clearly,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no wrinkle or blemish or anything like that, and we so often remember the past very differently.
Yes, we
Like
do.
I was wondering if, is this actually Christmas past or is this memory?
Yeah.
Was Fezziwig's party? He says he didn't spend that much. Maybe he didn't. Maybe it was just like 4 or 5 people.
Well, the fact that he did it.
Well, yes,
Invited.
but
Yeah.
but in Scrooge's memory, it was this great big party. All of this wonderful thing, and the appearance, at least, of strength.
Mm-hmm.
That we are bound to our past. It feels like it has this strong hold on us.
It does.
But
you can
maybe
escape
it doesn't
it.
actually.
Yeah. And in the book, actually, when that spirit comes back, he takes the little cone and just yams it down on his head, and this light shines forth. The light of, well, the movie version said truth, but so yeah, we tend to. It's how that song, Streisand song, The Way We Were. We forget the bad parts and we remember the good parts. Or we try to make it sound better. And I think when we think of Christmas, I think all of us probably have a tendency to go back to our childhood. Remember our childhood memories when everything was magical and exciting and everything. I mean, we can't ever bring it back. The older you get, the magic dies somewhat. Except for Sylvia.
No.
But you can't ever be a child again.
And it wasn't that great
No.
when you were a child.
No.
You don't remember it correctly.
Because you don't remember, well, maybe your parents, you didn't know that you didn't have any money.
Yeah.
You didn't know the different things, One Christmas that stands out in my mind was when I was about 9 years old and I had to have emergency surgery on the 21st. And way back then, you had to stay in the hospital for 2 weeks or so to recuperate. You weren't allowed to even get out of bed or anything. But the nurses, is what I've always heard, kicked up a fuss and told the doctor, since I'm not on death's doorstep, why can't she go home for Christmas? So Christmas morning they dismissed me. And I can remember Daddy carrying me in the house as snowflakes were falling. Of course, I don't remember as much the bad parts. I mean, what they were going through. I didn't, until years later, didn't know a lot of this stuff. But I remember that because it was Christmas and they let me go home. And it snowed. As Lord knows, you know how rare that is in the South.
Yeah.
And we all have memories of our childhood, and maybe not all the way back in childhood either. And we always try to make it sound like our past was perfect. I mean, my generation, I used to remind people that, we had to stand up and walk across the room to change the channels on the TV, and we had 3 channels, and 2 of them were always fuzzy because we lived so far from those channels. Everything, we want to make our past perfect. But like Scrooge, I'm sure all of us have some Scrooge episodes in our past.
No.
Except Kevin. Some things we kind of like to just, wouldn't tell anybody. But if we look at our past, we do see that there were people in our past that were very good to us. And maybe we don't realize until we look back there, hey, if it hadn't been for this particular person, I wouldn't have gotten where I am today. So, any questions? Let's pray. Gracious God, you know our past faults and failures because you are always with us. By the power of your Spirit, transform our heartache into acts of mercy and justice for your children today and every tomorrow. Sustain us with your presence and remind us of your salvation offered through Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Next week is Christmas present. Not the gift, the time.